So the most recent Curia poll was released last week, and it's created quite the stir surrounding New Zealand First and its potential to be part of our next government, given that it has risen to 13.6%, up by 3.9%. I say, prove it. Prove that New Zealand First has jumped so high so quickly. Prove that these results released by an unregulated right-wing leaning polling company are accurate. Prove that these results have not been manipulated to suit the agenda. I mean, just check this out. When you type in Curia poll, just look at the news titles. Very one-sided. It's almost like the media wants us to think something specific and are using the Curia poll to do it. Or vice versa. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Because let's face it, a poll is only as good as the questions that are being asked. And only as good as the pool of people taking the poll. And let's be real here, it's only as good as the company running it is. And Curia, along with the taxpayer union, not a union, cannot be considered trustworthy. You see, the Curia poll that the media are questionably running with was created by Curia Market Research. Curia Market Research was founded by David Farrar. David Farrar having worked for the National Party for a number of years prior to opening Curia, also having run a national-leaning blog and was found turning it up at National Party's election night event in 2023, alongside one of his besties, Jordan Williams, who is a co-founder of the New Zealand Taxpayers Union, not a union, alongside of David. So Curia has been running polls for the likes of National since Curia began in 2004. The Taxpayers Union and Curia have been working together to influence elections since the formation of the TPU in 2013. Their most recent and relevant successes to mention are the ACT Party's campaign in 2020 and having this current coalition of chaos elected in 2023. Oh, and we mustn't forget the campaign to stop Three Waters, which of course was successful for them, but wound up costing the New Zealand taxpayer $1.2 billion in completely wasted taxpayer money, with absolutely nothing to show for it but an impending doubling of rates and water bills while suffering from inadequate infrastructure leading to not so great water quality.
Okay, we are cooked. Yep, we are absolutely cooked, chat. GG.
You know, I actually remember the Stop Three Waters campaigns. I remember the types of people and the types of groups that were pushing these protests and the propaganda for this exact campaign. From memory, there was never any true critical thinking or mathematics that went into it. It was always fueled by hate, peer pressure, and echo chambers. In hindsight, and with all this information before me, there just ain't no way that these types of people weren't being paid by the likes of Jordan Williams and the Taxpayers Union. Or even the Free Speech Union, co-founded by Jordan Williams. Or perhaps the Campaign Company, also founded by Jordan Williams. The Free Speech Union being quite selective on what types of speech they protect and advocate for, usually anti-trans and white supremacy-ish fascist type rhetoric, which is unsurprising considering the FSU was originally formed in 2018 after white supremacists Lauren Southern and Stephen Malinois attempted to hold events across Aotearoa. Many were opposed to this, including the Mayor of Auckland at the time, Phil Goff, and these events were cancelled. This caused the White Knight, Jordan Williams, to start pulling strings, opening the Free Speech Coalition, which is now the FSU, and raising $150,000 to launch a legal fight alongside of Donny Brash against Phil Goff, and of course the Auckland Council, which he lost. So the FSU was born from the pursuit of keeping dangerous narratives alive while trampling on the rights of others in the process, which we can also see being pushed through the Campaign Company, who has questionable clients such as the Sensible Sentencing Trust, Groundswell NZ, and Hobson's Pledge. Hobson's Pledge also being a client of Curia. And for those who are unaware, Hobson's Pledge is pretty much an anti-Māori organisation run by ex-politicians and current politicians, fronted by a family friend of Jordan Williams, Don Brash, who is a former leader of the National Party from 2003 till 2006 and a former leader of the ACT Party in 2011. Jordan also interned for Don during his National Party leadership and allegedly assisted Don in his takeover bid of the ACT Party, which was ultimately short-lived. Oh, and the ACT Party is of course a client of Curia as well. So without going into further detail, you see the close circle of controlled chaos, right? But here's the thing. Curia's political sympathies and connections aren't the only thing that makes this type of poll questionable and damn near incredible. I mean, come on. The entire right bloc went up and the entire left bloc went down, while 90% of New Zealanders can barely afford to live because of this current right-wing government's poor policy making and wasteful spending that is literally taking from the poor to give to the rich. Not very likely. Manipulated results more likely, that's for sure. But what makes the Curia poll questionable is the fact that Curia market research is unregulated, as I said. You see, prior to August 2024, Curia Market Research was a member of the Research Association of New Zealand, RANZ. RANZ being the only industry body for professionals in research, data, and insights in New Zealand. They also serve as a trust mark for high ethical and professional standards in market and social research. So their members receive this trust mark, which basically lets everyone know that these organizations or individuals are ethical and professional, and that this has been checked against RANZ's own code of practice, which governs how their members interact with the public, setting benchmarks for data privacy, research integrity, and ethical conduct. Sounds good, right? They also investigate complaints made to them about their members. They then make a decision on whether or not their member has breached their code of practice, and then give sanctions to said member as deemed fit by the board or committee or whatever. Now, after numerous complaints made to RANZ about Curia's dubious practices, specifically regarding the framing of questions being asked within polls, rather than respond appropriately and professionally to these complaints, David, the director of Curia, decided to resign Curia from the Research Association. That way he wouldn't have to answer to the complaints made against him, would he? But not before admitting to the committee of RANZ investigating him that although he advises clients on the relative merits of questions, ultimately he will accept the question if the client insists. So this is David basically admitting he simply has zero ethics, lacks a complete backbone, and will run a poll with unethical question framing if his clients pushes him to. Or perhaps if they pay him enough. I mean, let's face it, a man in his position with his history doesn't simply succumb to insistence. It's the dollar bills that he will bend to. But regardless of resigning from RANZ, complaints were still investigated and results were still published, with RANZ upholding complaints and making findings against Curia coupled with sanctions, all of which is public information. So ultimately, this entire situation and everything I've broken down in this video makes it very, very clear, at least to me, that the polls run by an unregulated polling company at the request of a pretend union whose founders and board members have right-wing and alt-right leaning connections and sympathies, who have been actively involved in astroturfing and campaigning on behalf of the right bloc for over 10 years now, and happily brag about their results of swaying the public to shift to the right, cannot be trusted. So it brings me to question, why are the media relying on the Taxpayers Union Not a Union Curia poll to spark political debate about whether or not Winston Peters will be some sort of kingmaker once again? I have a few theories myself. Israel. Excuse me. But I want to know what you think. Do you think we should be allowing questionable and unregulated polls to influence our elections and our media?